So what if the ground beneath your feet wasn't just, rock and soil?
Oh.
What if it was actually like the solidified memories of empires that have fallen?
Okay, interesting.
And what if the gods themselves had uh, literally walked among us,
Hmm.
leaving footprints in reality itself?
That's the kind of scale we're talking about in the Forgotten Realms, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the world behind so many Dungeons and Dragons stories and the past there. Well, it isn't just history in a book. It breathes. It influences everything.
She's constantly present.
Yeah. Actually, just a few sessions ago in our campaign, we stumbled into this long-lost temple
Oh, yeah.
dedicated to some forgotten god, supposedly involved in, like, the world's creation.
Yeah.
Primordial stuff.
Wow.
And the deeper we went, the more we found these carvings, murals, depicting events from the Dawn Age. These incredibly powerful beings, maybe predating the current gods.
So it wasn't just background flavor.
Not at all. The temple's defenses, the traps, the guardians, they were all based on tactics from that ancient time. Understanding that bit of history was literally key to surviving down there.
That's a perfect example. It shows how deeply layered the realms are.
It really brought it home, how echoes from way back then can still be dangerous today.
Absolutely. That sense of a long, complex history, full of triumphs but also devastating losses, it's fundamental to the setting's appeal.
Right.
And that's really what we want to get into today, exploring that foundational lore.
Mm-hmm.
Our guide for this deep dive is an article from LitRPG Reads, Forgotten Realms Lore Explained, Major Events Every DM Should Know by Isaac Hansen.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And our aim here is to give you a kind of concise understanding. The major historical currents, the legendary figures that shaped the Forgotten Realms.
Think of it as getting the historical context. It should enrich your appreciation, maybe give you ideas for your own stories.
Exactly. A shortcut to the really big picture stuff.
So, the history of the Forgotten Realms. It unfolds through these distinct periods, these ages.
Right. And they aren't just arbitrary lines on a timeline.
No, each one represents a pretty significant shift, driven by, gods, powerful magic, mortal actions, all of it.
So where do we start?
We start way back with the Days of Thunder.
Okay.
Imagine this primordial world. Super raw, untamed, the landscape itself being forged by titans and dragons just clashing.
Epic scale. Age of creation stuff.
Right.
Elemental power unbound.
Yeah, laying the absolute groundwork for everything that came later.
Okay, so after those cataclysmic Days of Thunder, what's next?
Then came the Dawn Ages.
Right. This is where you start seeing the first big civilizations rise up.
Exactly, experimenting with arcane power on a scale that's frankly hard to imagine now.
You mentioned Netheril earlier.
Yeah, Nether was a classic example, right? Those floating cities defying gravity, a testament to ambition.
But also kind of a cautionary tale, reaching too far.
Definitely. And at the same time, you had places like Mithranor emerging.
The mystical city, harmony between elves and humans.
A real beacon, which contrasts sharply with, say, Amaskar.
Ah, Imaskar. Very different vibe. Self-imposed isolation, turning away from the way magic was developing elsewhere.
So the Dawn Ages were this time of incredible innovation, but also these dramatic collapses. The consequences just ripple outwards.
The fall of Netheril, for instance. That wasn't just cities crashing down.
No way. It fundamentally scarred the weave, the fabric of magic itself.
A huge event.
So from those magical highs and devastating lows of Dawn Ages, we transition into the Age of Humanity.
Okay, so a shift in focus.
A pretty major shift. This is where humankind starts to become, well, the dominant force across Faerun.
And with that rise comes the complications, I imagine.
Oh yeah, advancements, sure, but also widespread conflict. Empires fracture, new kingdoms and cultures rise and fall, all forging their own histories.
So this is where a lot of the familiar map starts taking shape. The regions and cultures we know from the game settings.
Pretty much. This is the bedrock for a lot of the modern realms.
And all these previous ages, the Thunder, the Dawn, the Age of Humanity, they all lead into what's called the present age.
Right. And it's crucial to get that the present in the Forgotten Realms isn't static.
Yeah.
It's a direct result of everything that happened before.
The politics, the cultures, the conflicts, they're all shaped by that history.
Absolutely. The types of threats players face, the opportunities they find, it's all connected.
And for dungeon masters, understanding this context is, well, invaluable.
It lets you build a much richer world. You could even set a campaign specifically in one of those earlier ages.
Imagine running a game during the rise of those early human kingdoms, or dealing with the fallout from Netheril's collapse firsthand.
So much potential there. It's worth maybe just pausing to highlight some of those specific huge events that punctuate these ages.
Yeah, the real game changers.
We're talking about things like, obviously, the fall of Netheril, the rise of Myth Drannor is this incredible center of magic and culture.
The time of troubles, which we'll definitely dig into more.
Oh yeah, ancient dragon wars that literally reshaped continents. The Weeping War, the first fall of Myth Drannor,
The Elven Crown Wars? Intricate, devastating.
and even relatively recent stuff like the sacking of Baldur's Gate shows how history keeps happening, keeps building.
Each one of those is a potential campaign seed, right? And a key to understand why things are the way they are now.
So studying this history, one thing becomes super clear. The huge role of major cataclysms.
Yeah, these aren't just bad storms or earthquakes. These are transformative events. They reshape geography, sure, but also the nature of magic, the influence of the gods.
The lines between mortal and divine just blur during these times, which, from a storytelling perspective,
The incredible potential. The source material really emphasizes this.
DMs get these ready-made scenarios for high-stakes campaigns.
Yeah.
Players could be dealing with the direct aftermath, trying to rebuild,
Or exploring lands that were just revealed or totally changed.
or maybe fighting villains who are trying to exploit all that chaos.
Definitely. So let's dive into a couple of the biggest ones. First up, the time of troubles.
Ah, yes. This was unprecedented. The gods themselves, stripped of their power.
Cast down, forced to walk the earth as mortals, diminished.
Just try to imagine the upheaval. The beings who literally maintain cosmic order are suddenly vulnerable.
Walking among mortals?
The impact on faith, on magic,
Mm.
must have been profound.
Absolutely. Followers questioning everything when their gods are suddenly tangible, flawed beings.
And the weave, the source of arcane magic, gets disrupted. Spellcasting becomes unpredictable, dangerous even.
Total chaos and uncertainty, but also maybe opportunity for new faiths, new philosophies to rise up.
Yeah, people trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And that power vacuum left by the gods. Ambitious mortals could seize power, often with terrible results.
There were some key moments during this time, Rose.
Huge ones. The death of Mystra, the goddess maintaining the weave, a massive loss with long-term effects on magic.
And you had Cyric ascending to godhood.
Through murder and deception, yeah.
Mm.
Shows how unstable the divine order was.
Then there's the fall of Baal, the lord of murder. And Tyr, the god of justice, having a mortal avatar appear.
It all just underscores these dramatic shifts in the heavens and how they directly impacted the world below.
The time of troubles basically reshaped how everyone understood divinity and magic.
Okay, so after that massive event, the realms get hit again with the Spellplague.
Right. Another cataclysm, this one triggered by Mystra's death during the time of troubles.
It unleashed this raw, untamed, arcane energy across the land. The blue fire.
And it wasn't targeted, it was just chaotic magic washing over everything, warping reality itself.
The devastation must have been immense. Bizarre transformations, too.
Yeah, geography altered, coastlines shifted, whole regions reshaped, creatures caught in the blue fire became the plague changed.
Mutated, unpredictable, dangerous magical abilities. Scary stuff.
And maybe one of the biggest consequences, the temporary merging of Aber and Toril.
Two different planes smashing together, bringing elements of another world into the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, so if you relied on magic, the Spellplague must have been terrifying.
The old rules just gone. Replaced by unpredictable surges, dangerous magical blowback.
Wizards, sorcerers, they had to adapt fast or face annihilation.
The source mentions specific disasters too, like Halrua, that magical land, completely submerged.
And up in Luskan, arcane piracy becomes a thing because the magical protections on the seas just fell apart.
It left a deep scar on the realms. Took decades just to start healing.
Which leads us eventually to the Sundering.
Okay, so the Sundering, what's the deal there?
Think of it as a kind of recalibration, a cosmic reset button almost, trying to restore some balance after the Spellplague.
Separating Aber and Toril again.
Exactly. The flow of magic started to stabilize, and ancient pantheons, old gods, started to reawaken or return.
So it sounds restorative, like healing those wounds from the Spellplague in the time of troubles.
That's the idea. The source highlights things like lost cities returning, the original Myth Drannor reappearing is a huge symbol.
A symbol of that old unity and magical harmony.
Yeah, and gods thought lost or destroyed coming back into the picture.
Which naturally shakes up the political landscape again, right? Old alliances reforming, new power struggles.
Definitely. And it also meant a return to more familiar magic systems for a lot of people, connecting back to the pre-Spellplague era, which was probably a relief for many.
Okay, so beyond these massive world-shaking events, The realms are also just full of legendary figures.
Oh, yeah. Heroes, villains, gods. They add so much texture to the setting.
They're not just footnotes in history books. They can be inspirations for campaigns or even active players in the story.
Absolutely. Using these iconic characters as NPCs, it can create really memorable moments for your players.
Imagine seeking advice from Elminster or getting tangled in Sastam's plots.
These figures carry that weight of history. It adds instant gravitas.
So who are some of the big names we should know?
Well, you've got the heroic side, like Dris Do'Urden, the Drow Ranger, challenging prejudice up in Icewind Dale.
The classic. And Elminster, the ancient sage of Cormanthor. Always knows more than he lets on.
Definitely. Then, on the darker side, there's this terrifying Lish Larlock lurking in the north.
And gods like Kelemvor, stern but fair ruler of the dead, contrasted with someone like Cyric.
The villainous god, still causing trouble from the Shadowfell. And Moradin, the solid, dependable dwarven creator god.
Can't forget Mystra, goddess of magic. Her whole cycle of death and rebirth is central to arcane power.
True. Then you have mortals, or formerly mortals, wielding immense power. Sastam, the necromancer lord of Tay, Mert the moneylender in Waterdeep.
Waterdeep's got a few, doesn't it? Laurel Silverhand, the powerful sorceress. Kelvin Aronson, the archmage.
Even the Nine Hells have legends impacting the realms, like Zerial ruling Avernus now.
And the Underdark, Grom Banri and Menzoberranzan. Hallister Blackcloak under Waterdeep in Undermountain.
Or someone like Fulchembrel in the Moonsea region, representing the darker side of faith. Each one has a rich history, still influencing things today.
It's just crucial to remember, though, while these legends are great for flavor and plot hooks.
The players should still be the stars.
Exactly. These NPCs enhance the journey, they don't overshadow it. Allies, mentors, rivals, obstacles. But the players drive the story.
Well said. And speaking of powerful entities, the gods. They're pantheons. They are an undeniable, immediate force in the realms.
Not distant figures at all. Their influence is everywhere. Politics, magic, daily life.
And they embody concepts, right? They gain power directly from worship.
Which creates this dynamic link between the divine and mortal realms. Their power flows through the weave.
Which Mystra oversees, usually, highlighting, again, how tied magic is to the cosmic order.
And the more followers a god has, the more influence they wield, which leads to all sorts of interesting stories about faith, divine intervention, the rise and fall of gods.
For sure. And the pantheon itself is so diverse. You mentioned Mystra for magic, Tyr for justice.
Lathander for dawn and beginnings, Lolth, the Spider Queen, deceit, Bahamut for justice and protection.
Shar for night and loss, Saloon for the moon and dreams, Tempest, the god of war, Soon, beauty and love.
Moradin for dwarven craft, Grumsh for Orcish conquest, Ogma for knowledge, Torm for duty and loyalty. It's a huge cast.
And they don't always get along.
Definitely not. Divine conflicts, alliances. That's a whole other layer.
It mirrors mortal politics in a way. Priesthoods clash, ideological battles spill over, sometimes even holy wars that players can get caught up in.
Think about Bane versus Mystra, how that might play out among mage guilds, or Grumsh versus Coral and Lorithian.
Leading to border skirmishes between orcs and elves, fueled by divine hatred, adds so much complexity.
So wrapping this up, it's clear the Forgotten Realms lore is incredibly rich. History, events, characters, mortal and divine.
It's just a vast, inspiring toolbox for anyone telling stories in this world. Endless possibilities.
And like Isaac Hansen points out in that LitRPG Reads piece, understanding the history adds depth, absolutely. But don't let strict accuracy stop you from telling a great story.
Right. Feel free to draw inspiration, mix things up, make the lore serve your campaign.
That's the key. Make it your own.
So a big thanks again to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for that overview. Really helpful stuff.
Fine fellow, Paul Bell.
Indeed. Now we want to hear from you, the listeners.
Yeah, head down to the comments. Let us know. What do you think are the most impactful events or legendary figures in the Forgotten Realms?
And why? What resonates the most with you? We're really interested to see your takes.